Good morning, children. Let's begin with the explanation of lesson 4.4, The Height of the Ridiculous by Oliver Wendell Holmes. The text type, it's a poem and it is a humorous poem. The Height of the Ridiculous by Oliver Wendell Holmes is a humorous poem written for enjoyment with plenty of funny expressions. The main purpose of the poet is to simply entertain the readers. And I'm very sure you all are going to enjoy this poem. It's a very simple poem to understand. Now, before we begin with the explanation, let's tickle our funny bones with the pandemic laughter. It's rightly said, laughter is the best medicine. In serious times, laughter can uplift your spirits. I'm sure this pandemic laughter will make you feel happier and lighter in these challenging times of COVID-19 pandemic. So go through these situations, the situations of COVID-19 from which humor has been created, and I'm very sure that it would tickle your funny bones. So go through it, try to understand. Now let's begin with the explanation of the poem. Let us begin with the explanation of the poem, The Height of the Ridiculous. Ridiculous means too funny to believe. I wrote some lines once on a time in wondrous merry mood and thought, as usual, men would say they were exceeding good. The poet begins the poem by telling us that once when he was in wondrous merry mood, wondrous means delightful mood. He was in a merry mood, very happy mood. At that time, he wrote few lines. And after writing these lines, the poet thought, as usual, men would say, as usual, people who would read these lines would say that they were exceedingly good, that these lines were exceptionally good. They were so queer, so very queer. I laughed as I would die, albeit in the general way a sober man am I. The poet says that the lines which he had written, they were very queer. Queer means strange, funny. The lines which he wrote, they were so strange and funny that the poet himself laughed so much that he felt that he would die. Albeit, make a correction here in the spelling. Albeit means though, although, even though. But the poet says that though he in a general way, he is a very sober man. Sober means a person who is very clear-headed, very serious. So sober people, they are very serious. They never laugh too much. But though he was a sober man, he was a very serious person. The lines which he had written, they were so strange and so funny that the poet himself laughed as if he would die. I called my servant and he came. How kind it was of him to mind a slender man like me, he of the might limb. The poet called his servant, and as soon as he called his servant, he came. So the poet says that it was really kind of his servant to mind a slender man like him, and he of might limb. How was the servant? The servant was very mighty, was very strong. His limbs means arms and legs, they were very strong. But still, the servant used to mind. Mind means to take care, used to worry for the poet who was very slender. Slender means very thin, very slim, very small. These to the printer, I exclaimed, and in my humorous way I added, as a trifling jest, there will be the devil to pay. So the poet called for his servant and told the servant to take these lines to the printer for printing. And in a humorous way, he just added a trifling jest. Trifling means something which is of no importance, and jest is a simple joke. So you have the meaning trifling jest, a small simple joke of no importance. So the poet was very humorous, so he just in his humorous way just joked with the servant. And what did he say? There will be the devil to pay. Here, there will be the devil to pay means a lot of trouble for the person who is going to read the lines. Because after reading the poem, after reading these humorous lines, there would be strong reactions. And the person who would read these lines would bear the consequences of reading such humorous lines. He took the paper and I watched, and I saw him peep within. At the first line he read, his face was all upon the grin. Now, when the poet gave the paper with the lines which he had written, the funny lines which he had written to the servant, he saw that the servant started reading the lines. Saw him peep within. Peep means to see and read the lines. And the first line, when the servant read, there was a grin on his face. Grin means a wide smile. And he was laughing as soon as he read the first line. He read the next. The grin grew broad and shot from ear to ear. He read the third. A chuckling noise I now began to hear. So the poet says that when the servant read the second line, his grin, that is, his wide smile, grew broader. And the poet felt that this wide smile had grown so broad that it reached, short means reached, it reached from one ear to the other ear. When the servant read the third line, now the poet was able to hear a chuckling noise. Chuckling means laughing very softly. Now he had started laughing, though it was a soft laughter, but he had started laughing after reading the third line. The fourth, he broke into a roar. The fifth, his waistband split. The sixth, he burst 5 buttons off and tumbled in a fit. So when the servant read the fourth line of the poem, he broke into a roar. He couldn't control himself, he could not resist himself, but he started laughing very loudly. When he read the fifth line of the poem, his waistband split. The belt which he was wearing on his waist, it split, it broke. When he read the sixth line of the poem, now this line was so funny that the 5 buttons of his shirt, they burst off. They burst off means they also broke. And the servant tumbled in a fit. Now, when you cannot control your laughter, when you cannot control yourself, you tumble, right? To tumble is to fall down suddenly and very quickly. So the servant also fell down because he couldn't control his laughter. And he tumbled in a fit. Now, in a fit means in an impulsive and irregular manner. Fit also means an illness in which a person becomes unconscious. So he started becoming sick now. He was laughing so much. 10 days and nights, with sleepless eye, I watched that wretched man, and since I never dare to write as funny as I can. So the condition of the servant was so bad that the poet for 10 days and nights couldn't sleep. With sleepless eye means he could not sleep, but he was continuously watching the wretched man. Here, the wretched man was the servant, and wretched means in a helpless condition. The servant was laughing and he couldn't control his laughter after reading the lines which were written by the poet, that his condition had become helpless. And The poet felt very bad to see the helpless condition of his servant, that he decided that he would never dare, that he would never make an attempt to write lines as funny as he had written or as he can write. So, children, I hope you all have understood the poem. If there are any doubts, you can just write it and keep it with you so that when we meet the next time, you can just ask your doubts. Thank you very much.